Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Lux and Luna danced, staring into each other's eyes with smiles on their faces. Their steps were elegant and graceful, seemingly experienced. Both of them had taken dancing lessons from the choreographer that Francesca hired a month ago just for this very scene. Both of them wished for the song to be a little longer, but contrary to their wishes, the song soon came to an end. Suddenly, the tolling of a bell resounded in the night, making Lux look sadly at his partner. Without saying a word, he left the scene and rushed toward the palace garden in haste. After a moment of hesitation, Luna followed, almost running in order to catch up to him, with a hint of anxiety on her face. A few minutes later, she found the prince, standing at the center of the garden, illuminated by the moonlight. "It's time to say goodbye," Lux said as he turned around to look at the young lady. "It was fun while it lasted." "Where are you going?" Luna asked while approaching him with hurried steps. "Somewhere very far," Lux answered. "Can I go with you?" "No." Lux sadly smiled before giving Luna a hug. She hugged him back, almost pressing her entire body against him as if wishing to become one with him then and there. The two didn't say anything and simply held each other in a loving embrace. A minute later, the half-elf reluctantly stepped back. "Wherever I may be, know that I will always think of you," Lux said. Just as he was about to walk away, Luna suddenly grabbed his hand, holding him in place. She then closed the gap between them and wrapped her hands around Lux's neck before standing on tiptoe. A second later, she pressed her lips against his, giving him a kiss. "I'll wait for you," Luna said after she pulled back from the kiss, "no matter how long it takes." "I may not be able to return," Lux replied. "Will you wait even then?" "Yes. Even if I grow old and decrepit, I will wait for you," Luna said with determination. "So, you better return before that happens." These weren't part of the script, and the two were ad-libbing, and yet, the emotions behind their words resonated with Francesca's heart. She had given them the green light to improvise in order to make this particular scene more impactful. The two stared at each other's eyes, firmly holding each other as if they didn't want to part. Lux then lowered his head to kiss Luna's lips, to which the latter replied in kind. The two kissed and kissed and kissed, making the men and women at the scene feel jealous. Finally, after half a minute of kissing, Lux finally pulled back and gave Luna a confident smile. "Goodbye, Mary," Lux said. "I will keep this memory in my heart." The half-elf then turned before walking away. Luna watched him go with tears streaming down her face. The staff was impressed by her acting skills, but they didn't know that she wasn't acting. Her tears came from the heart because she knew that Lux would really disappear from her life before the night was over. At that exact moment, Francesca's voice reverberated in the surroundings. "Cut!" Francesca shouted. "Good take." Holly immediately went to Luna's side and gave her a hug. "That was amazing," Holly said. "Well done, Luna. Here, let me wipe those tears away." The beautiful woman started to gently dab Luna's tears using a tissue paper so that it wouldn't ruin her makeup. Everyone congratulated her, including Francesca, who was very happy with how the scene turned out. Luna thanked them before her gaze wandered off to the corner of the set, where Lux stood with his arms crossed over his chest. The half-elf waved in her direction, and she waved back at him despite the sadness she was feeling. "Okay, everyone, let's go and eat our fill at the buffet," Francesca ordered. "I'm a bit hungry, especially after seeing that kissing scene." The staff members laughed and looked at Lux and Luna, who had made an impressive shoot with only one take. "Are you not coming?" Holly asked Luna, who was still standing in place. "No," Luna replied. "Manager, it's fine to leave now, right?" Holly looked at the young lady before shifting her gaze to the half-elf, who was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed over his chest. A realization came to her mind before nodding her head. "Here, take this," Holly said as she handed something to Luna before whispering something in her ear. "Do things in moderation, okay?" Without another word, the third wheel left the set, leaving Luna behind. As soon as Holly left, Luna ran in Lux's direction and almost jumped into his arms. Naturally, her prince caught her gently and pulled her into his embrace. The two hugged each other in silence for a full minute before Luna raised her head to offer her lips to him. Lux accepted her offering and kissed her lovingly. A few seconds later, he raised her right hand and also gave it a kiss. "What is this that you are holding?" Lux asked in a teasing tone, while lightly waving the thing that Holly had given her a while ago. "Are you feeling a little naughty?" The young lady pouted and lightly pounded Lux's chest with her fist. "You're so mean," Luna replied. "You already know that Holly gave it to me, and you still tease me about it." The half-elf chuckled before moving his hands to carry Luna in a princess carry. A moment later, a pair of draconic wings appeared on his back. "Hold on, princess," Lux whispered seductively in Luna's ears. "I will show you the world." With a flap of his wings, he took off to the skies, holding the young lady in his arms. Luna looked up at him and asked the question that she had been meaning to ask. "How long?" Luna asked. She didn't need to finish her sentence because there was no need to say anything more than that. 2 hours and 40 minutes, Lux replied. The half-elf then flapped his wings to fly to a secret viewing platform that gave a scenic view of the town they were currently in. This town had an old castle, which the crew had used to shoot the scene. It was surrounded by lush forest, making it a very touristy area to visit. Lux had scouted the place while everyone was asleep, wanting to find the best place to spend a memorable time with Luna. Unfortunately, he didn't find any, so he decided to make one himself. Using his magic, he created an elevated platform on the small mountain near the forest. This allowed them to have a full view of everything around them, creating a picturesque setting. The view was indeed beautiful, and yet, instead of being happy, Luna only felt sadness. She only had a little more than 2 hours to spend time with him, and after that, he would disappear and return to the worlds of Solais and Elysium. Back to the worlds where her sister, Aina, was waiting for his return. "Lux, do you think you will be able to return to Earth again?" Luna asked. "I don't know," Lux replied. "I'm sorry, Luna. I really don't have any idea." The countless glowing golden balls with eyes was the one who had brought Lux back to Earth. He didn't know what they were and why they did something like this. Perhaps they only did it due to a whim, or maybe they had a reason for doing what they did. Even so, Lux didn't know whether he would be able to return to Earth again and meet the beautiful lady in his arms. A few minutes passed in silence as both of them looked at the castle where they shot their last scene just a few moments ago. "Lux," Luna muttered softly as she looked him straight in the eye. "Embrace me." "I can't," Lux replied. "I can't do this to you." Lux didn't want to accept Luna's wish because he was afraid. He feared that once he crossed that line, he would be unable to stop himself from falling in love with her completely. Even at this moment, he was doing his best to hold himself back. Kisses, cuddles, and hugs were still fine. But if they end up going all the way, not only would it leave a lasting impression on both of their hearts, but they would also reach the point of no return. Of course, he liked her. He liked her very much. She was his greatest fantasy when he was still in his previous life on Earth. He was certain that any man would kill for the opportunity to swap places with him. Fortunately, no matter how much he liked her, Lux could still remain rational and stop himself from doing anything impulsive, especially since he only had a little more than 2 hours remaining to spend with her. Sure, he would probably be the happiest man in the world if he were to embrace his idol at this point in time. But he was certain that after the euphoria ended and after that exhilarating rush faded, only sadness and heartbreak would remain. Luna bit her lip bitterly before lowering her head. Her vision turned blurry as she fought hard to stop the tears from falling from her eyes. The reason why she took the initiative to ask Lux to embrace her was to let him feel a stronger connection with her. She wanted to have a lasting memory that would remain with her, even if he would never appear in her life ever again. Suddenly, Luna thought of that fateful day when Aina was going to undergo her operation. She was in the middle of one of her idol events, so she couldn't be with her in her final moments. Only after the show ended did Holly tell her about the result of her sister's operation. That time, Luna immediately left the venue and rushed straight to the hospital. When she arrived and saw her sister's lifeless body, She felt as if her world had broken apart. It was as if a black hole had appeared in her heart, devouring all life and happiness in her surroundings. That day was the day that Luna entered a state of depression that lasted for many years. She blamed herself for prioritizing her career over supporting her sister and encouraging her to do her best to live. Aina's death was one of Luna's greatest regrets in life, and it was still haunting her to this day. Suddenly, as if gaining a strength that came from the deepest corner of her heart, Luna stood up and pressed her hands over Lux's shoulder. "Never again," Luna muttered. "I don't want to regret ever again." Despite being weaker than the half-elf, Luna succeeded in pushing him down, which surprised Lux. "I know what you're thinking," Luna said as she straddled Lux's abdomen, with both her hands cupping his face. "You are afraid of leaving me behind. You don't want me to spend my life waiting for you. I know this very well, but there is something you don't understand." Luna started pounding Lux's chest in anger as her tears started to drip onto his body. "It's always harder to be the one who's left behind than to be the one who leaves," Luna almost shouted. "Why? Why do all those that I love leave me? My sister, my grandparents, and now you. Why do all of you leave me? Why?" Luna was no longer able to hold back her feelings and cried bitterly. After her sister's death, her grandparents followed a few years later. The people closest to her had left her completely alone to fend for herself. The only thing she could do was focus on her work in order to distract herself from the heartache and pain that she was suffering. All these years, she had closed her heart from everyone else and focused everything on her career. Working had been her coping mechanism. It was the only thing that allowed her fragile heart to slowly recover. They said that all things heal with time. But there were simply some things that even time couldn't heal. Lux stared at the young lady, whose heart was close to breaking. Her words pierced his heart, making him understand how much courage it took for her to take the initiative to ask him to embrace her. It's always harder to be the one who's left behind than the one who leaves. He had heard this quote in the past, but he never really thought much about it. It was only at this moment in time did he fully understand what it meant, but the price for his understanding was Luna's pain and suffering. Lux reached out and pulled the young lady, whose heart was breaking, close to him and held her tight. "I'm sorry," Lux apologized. "I was being insensitive. I thought I was doing you a favor, but in the end, I ended up hurting you." Luna cried bitter tears as Lux held her tight. Only after a few minutes did she regain her composure, sobbing helplessly as the half-elf kissed her forehead and wiped the tears from her eyes. "Luna, I cannot promise you anything," Lux said softly as he cupped her face. "But if there is a way to return to you, I will find it. So, please, can you give me 10 years? If during that time, I still haven't found a way, then feel free to forget me." "I won't forget," Luna replied, "because I know that you will return to me. I just know it." The two kissed once again, sealing the promise they vowed to each other. Soon, the rustling of clothes spread faintly in the quiet night as the two of them decided to take that last step to consummate the love that they had been holding back in the deepest corners of their hearts. Luna expected her first time to be painful. There was indeed pain, but more than anything, she felt loved. Lux was very gentle, treating her as if she was something very precious, making her heart overflow with warmth and happiness. Luna had already forgotten how it felt to be on the receiving end of a loving touch, which she only felt when she was being held by her family members. It was at that moment when she realized how much she hungered for human touch. Lux's touch, kisses, and whispers of love were like small flames that ignited the longing and the lust that she never knew existed inside of her body. She had spent many years working and focusing all of her attention on her idol career, so she didn't have time to think about these things. Yes, there were many handsome men from influential families and even celebrities who courted her. But she didn't have the time or capacity to open her heart to other people because she was still grieving for the loss of her parents, her sister, and her grandparents. Simply put, her heart had become cold and numb. Lux appearing in her life had thawed this ice, allowing her heart to beat once more. The past 6 months that they had spent together shooting the movie, were the happiest days of her life, ever since she lost all of her beloved family members. The half-elf didn't know that simply by staying beside Luna, she had started to get a new lease of life, especially after knowing that somewhere out there, her sister, Aina, was living a happy life. Lux told her that Aina was surrounded by a loving family who would even lay down their lives to protect her. For Luna, this was enough. She even started to hope that someday, Lux would bring Aina to Earth so that the two of them could have a reunion and hug each other again, like they used to do when they were younger. Wanting to engrave his shape, his warmth, his everything, Luna raised her hips, offering herself to the man who made her feel what it was like to fall in love. With each thrust, he went deeper inside her. With each cry that escaped her lips, she felt that she was falling for him, more and more. When both of them found sweet release together, it came like a raging tide, washing over Luna, sweeping her away, until she lay, gasping for breath, but still connected with him. Even though no words were said between them, the half-elf understood that Luna wanted more. Her flushed face that was looking at him in a daze was enough to reignite the desire in his heart. Just as she wanted, Lux made her his woman, marking her from the inside out. Only when she could no longer go on did the half-elf stop. He made her drink a rejuvenation potion so that she would regain her strength. As much as Lux wanted to leave the kiss marks on her alluring body untouched, he knew that he couldn't do that. Luna was a celebrity, so any marks on her body might bring controversy. Although the rejuvenation potion had removed some of them, he used healing magic just to be sure. The half-elf even inspected every part of her to make sure that he didn't leave any marks behind. The young lady found this meticulous side of him quite amusing, and yet, it only made her feel blessed because he was looking after her. She lovingly caressed her lower abdomen, feeling the pleasant heat inside her womb that was filled to the brim. Lux used a spell that would prevent his essence from leaking. This was his way of making Luna feel as if he was still with her, even though he would disappear in half an hour. The two held each other close, feeling each other's warmth for the last time. They also kissed, and kissed some more, until there were only 15 minutes before Lux's departure from Earth. "It's time," Lux said softly as he reluctantly stood up and took out a one-piece nightdress to cover Luna's body. He then pulled his clothes on before holding his princess in his arms. Opening his draconic wings, he flew towards the hotel where they were staying and landed on the balcony of Luna's room. "If someone comes looking for me, tell them that I returned home." Lux cupped Luna's face and kissed her forehead. "Take care of yourself, Luna. I will do my best to find a way to return to you." Luna nodded. "I'll be waiting. Make sure to bring Aina with you when you return. I miss her terribly." "I will." Lux pressed his forehead over hers. "I promise." The minutes passed slowly as the two held each other. When there was only 2 minutes left, Lux took out a ring out of his storage ring. He then slid it to Luna's finger before raising her hand to his lips, giving it a kiss. "Goodbye, Luna," Lux said softly. "See you soon." Luna's eyes moistened as she nodded her head. Lux didn't want to wait until the last second and disappear in front of her. No, he didn't want to do that. So, before the timer ended, he left the room and flew towards the sky. And 5 seconds, and 4 seconds, and 3 seconds, and 2 seconds, and 1 second. When the counter turned 0, Lux found himself standing at outer space, staring at the countless galaxies that made up the universe. A moment later, a swarm of golden eyeballs appeared in his vision, encircling him like a tornado. "You did well. That was entertaining," the voice said in a teasing tone. "Although the lives of you mortals are fleeting, you still shine like a dazzling star before exploding in glorious death. Because you entertained me, I will grant you the privilege of asking me one question. So, is there something that you want to ask me?" Lux nodded. "Who are you?" This was truly the question that he wanted to know. As long as he got a name, he would be able to ask Ariel and Max about this whimsical being who had brought him back to Earth. "Who are you?" All the golden eyeballs started to giggle after hearing Lux's quest. Their giggles were like countless pealing bells that resonated within the entirety of the universe, reaching far and wide. I know where the old ones broke through of old, and where they shall break through again. I know where they trod the multiverse's fields, and where they tread them still, and why no one can behold them as they tread. I am the key and the guardian of the gate. Past, present, future, all are one with me. I am Yog-Sothoth. All the golden eyes then merged together, forming a gigantic golden gate with countless eyes that were looking at Lux with different emotions. Happiness, sadness, anger, loneliness, pity, ridicule, disdain, and all the myriad emotions of the world and beyond, focused on a single being, who was only as big as a grain of sand in front of the majestic gate. Slowly, but surely, the gate slowly opened, and Lux found himself slowly being pulled inside it. I give you one last piece of advice, Lux von Kaiser, Yog-Sothoth said. No one alive in this multiverse can defeat your foe. Your fairy tale has not ended. I am looking forward to its conclusion. The gigantic golden gate closed as Lux's body passed through it. Soon, it disappeared from existence, not leaving even a single trace behind. 1 year after Lux's battle against Daniel in the Abyss, cracks started to form over the giant block of crystal that stood at the location where the great battle between the Abyss and the defenders of the Six Kingdoms took place. With every minute that passed, more cracks appeared, until finally, the entire crystal shattered and turned into particles of light. A soft thud was heard, as the body of a half-elf collapsed on the ground. Snow was raining from the sky, covering the entirety of the land in white. Lux lay unmoving, his face pale, not from the cold, but because his body was still in a state of hibernation. His soul had just returned to his body, so it would take some time before it merged with it completely. A few minutes passed when a set of footsteps was heard trudging through the snowy landscape. After seeing that the block of crystal had disappeared from its spot, the steps quickened, almost running to the place where a person that was lying on the ground was slowly being covered in snow. Asmodeus waved his hand, sending the snow that covered the young man flying, revealing his master, whom he hadn't seen for more than a year. His hands trembled as he made a gesture to make Lux's body float in front of him. The Lich King then pressed his hand over the half-elf's chest to see if it was beating. A look of happiness flashed across his face as he heard a faint heartbeat. Although it was faint, it was enough to tell him that his master was alive and well. Master has returned, Asmodeus announced to his comrades, who were scattered all over Elysium. All of them were busy raising their forces for the return of their master. Almost all of them, with the exception of Asmodeus, had not yet reached the quota that they had set in the beginning. Because of this, they couldn't return to their master's side, as per their agreement. Worry not, I will look after master while all of you continue your task, Asmodeus stated. He will take some time to heal, so use this opportunity to gather your army in his honor. Diablo and the others all voiced their reply, and asked Asmodeus to take care of Lux while they were away. Now that their master had returned, all of them redoubled their efforts to bring their own 100,000 armies to fruition. Asmodeus then carried Lux's body, taking him away from the cold and harsh conditions of his surroundings. The environment of Solais had degraded as the miasma slowly encroached upon the territories of the Six Kingdoms. The abyssal invasion had somehow hastened the effect of the world's destruction, forcing the inhabitants of Solais, who were affected by the miasma, to flee into Elysium. Despite the ongoing war between the abyssal creatures that managed to gain a foothold in Elysium and the defenders who stood in their way, the Solaians had no choice but to flee to this world. Now, among the Sixth Kingdom, only 4 were left, including Barbados Academy, who was at the farthest point where the miasma was spreading. The Barbarian Kingdom, where the battle took place, was also slowly being devoured by the miasma that threatened to corrupt and kill anything it touched. Asmodeus was already planning on moving the giant crystal away from the Barbarian Kingdom in order to ensure his master's safety. Although Lux had returned to Solais, none of them had felt it. Technically, his body was still half dead and was only in preservation mode. According to the Lich King's estimate, Lux would need 1 more month before he fully regained his consciousness. In order to hasten his recovery, Asmodeus planned to take Lux to a Spore Frieden and asked Hearswith to help the half-elf receive the help of the World Tree. The World Tree was the driving force that gave the elves their power. Despite only being half, Lux still had elven blood flowing through his veins. Because of this, the Lich King believed that the World Tree would be able to help his master, who had finally returned to their side, after a year of being frozen in time. Fortunately, Hearswith was there when he arrived at a Spore Frieden. With her help, Lux was able to gain access to the World Tree, and was allowed to rest in one of its roots. They didn't know that by doing so, the World Tree would take the initiative to transfer a quarter of its lifespan and power to the half-elf, allowing him to become the youngest saint in both Solais and Elysium. While Lux was recovering in the World Tree, the demigods of the Abyss near the center of Elysium had gathered to have a meeting. Currently, they were in a stalemate with the powerhouses of Elysium. Although they had conquered many kingdoms and empires at the beginning of their invasion, their advance gradually slowed and had now come to a standstill. The dragons, the high elves, the divine army of light, Memento Mori, and the other races of Elysium were starting to push them back. "Have you managed to contact Nyarlathotep?" A demon asked the adamantium gargoyle that was seated across from him. "Yes," the gargoyle replied, "but he is still having fun in his conquest of the West. He said that if we can't even handle something this simple, we should just let the dragons kill us because of how useless we are." The demigods who were part of the meeting seethed in anger after hearing the gargoyle's statement. If only the full force of the Abyssal army had managed to pass through the Abyssal gates before it closed off, then Elysium would have long been conquered by now. The Abyss had more demigods, calamities, empyreans, and other lower-level Abyssal monsters than Elysium. Simply put, once the invasion began, there was no question that they would win hands down. However, the sudden closure of the gates had taken everyone by surprise. Their connection with the Abyss was also thoroughly severed, making them realize that they had been cut off from their home world. Although they could still vaguely sense a bit of abyssal energy leaking in Elysium, it was impossible to open any of the gates in the world that would connect to the Abyss. In short, the Abyssal army and the defenders of Elysium were currently in a battle of attrition. Unless Nyarlathotep joined forces with them and gathered the rest of the Abyssal demigods who were still expanding their domain, it would only be a matter of time before the balance tilted in the Elysians' favor. "Who is the greatest threat we are facing right now?" another demon asked. "Why don't we just focus all our forces into attacking that faction first? After they are eliminated, we will shift to our next target." The adamantine gargoyle looked at the map of the center of Elysium in front of them. "Our greatest threat is the dragon race," the adamantine gargoyle explained. "The dragons of Karshvar Draconis and Crystal Palace are holding key locations, preventing our army from breaking past their defenses. The Divine Army is playing guerrilla tactics and hitting our forces every time we least expect them to. The same can be said for Memento Mori. Those necromancers are using the people we killed, as well as our fallen brethren, to fight against us. These two organizations are like cockroaches that are very hard to kill." The demon then looked in the kingdom of the High Elves where the World Tree was located. "Attacking the World Tree is also a pain," the demon commented. "Within its territory, all High Elves and Elves are getting a boost in strength, and we, on the other hand, are weakened. Although they should be our top priority, without Nyarlathotep leading the charge, destroying the World Tree is impossible." The other demons all nodded their heads in agreement. "Since the headquarters of the Divine Army and Memento Mori are unknown, the only places we can attack are the two dragon kingdoms," the adamantine gargoyle commented. "But both of them have a few members of Memento Mori each, controlling the undead ancient dragons, who are by far the greatest threat we are facing at the moment." It was at that moment when a voice filled with disdain spoke to everyone in the meeting room. "Since all of you are not prepared for a head-on confrontation with the powerful forces of Elysium, I suggest we employ hit-and-run tactics, alongside a divide-and-conquer strategy." Everyone's gaze landed on the fallen angel, who went by the name Elijah. He was handsome and looked like a man in his mid-20s. However, everyone in the meeting knew that this fallen angel was actually thousands of years old and was a very formidable fighter. His main weapon was a lance, and with it, he had carved his own domain within the Abyss, proudly ruling the 555th floor. The other demigods didn't want to mess with him, which made him grow very conceited. However, after suffering a loss from Daniel and Nyarlathotep, he was forced to lower his head and submit. Even so, he still kept his arrogance because he believed that, aside from those two beings, no one in the abyss was stronger than him. Even the demigods who were gathered in the meeting acknowledged his strength. For this operation, I will volunteer myself as the temporary leader of the abyssal invasion until Nyarlathotep returns and takes control, Elijah stated. Do any of you oppose my proposal? The fallen angel scanned the faces of the crowd with a calm expression on his face. But, deep inside, he was mocking all of them for not having the guts to challenge his leadership. In the end, no one opposed him, and just like that, he became the supreme commander of the abyssal forces that were congregated at the center of Elysium. I will divide you into different teams based on your specialty, Elijah said. We will use guerrilla tactics and initiate a bombardment on several cities. Regardless of the outcome, we are going to retreat right away. Once we find a hole in their defenses, we will hit them there, and hit them hard. The fallen angel then waved his hand, making the map on the round table disappear. Instead of the map of the center of Elysium, a new map appeared, making the demigods frown. For this strategy, we will not target the dragons or the other two factions for the time being. Elijah smiled as he pointed his spear at the map that he had placed on the table. Our target will be none other than Agartha, the kingdom located near the core of the world. I managed to locate a few of their hidden entrances, and with the forces at our disposal, it should only be a matter of time before their defenses crumble. The fallen angel's eyes glinted with malice, making the demigods look at the map with solemn expressions on their faces. They never considered attacking Agartha because they were located deep underground. However, that advantage would now turn into a disadvantage. With the entrances to their kingdom fully controlled by the abyss, they would have no place to run and hide, leaving them no choice but to fight to the death or submit to the abyssal monsters that would soon come knocking on their doorstep. 2 weeks after Lux returned to Solais, a green cocoon pulsating at the root of the world tree slowly opened, revealing a half-elf wearing nothing but his birthday suit. The young man's eyes fluttered before opening slowly. Half a minute later, he slowly propped himself up from the ground and looked around his surroundings. Where am I? Lux thought. Just as he was pondering the answer to this question, a faint breeze blew past him, carrying a familiar voice that made him turn to his right side. I'm glad that you're finally awake. One of the most beautiful women he had seen in all his lives combined appeared in front of him. Lux couldn't help but smile as his grandmaster, Hirswith, walked toward him with a mischievous expression on her face. Grandmaster, Lux greeted as he stood up from the ground. Hirswith scanned him from head to foot, but her gaze went up a little and stopped at Lux's middle region. Is it just me, or has it grown a little bigger than before? Hirswith muttered. The half-elf followed his master's gaze to see what she was looking at, only to find little Lux standing tall and proud as if asking Hirswith to fight him for 200 rounds. He tried to summon a few clothes from his storage ring, but nothing happened. It was at that moment that he realized that his storage rings weren't in his possession, making him frown. Looking for these? Hirswith showed her fingers that wore 1 ring each. I took them from you for safekeeping. The world tree rejects anything that wasn't born from nature. Because of its disposition, I had to remove these rings from your body. Only then did the world tree cover you up in a cocoon, speeding up your recovery. So, how do you feel? Lux closed his eyes in order to check whether there were any changes in his body. A moment later, his eyes opened wide, and he looked at his grandmaster in disbelief. I am now a saint, Lux said in disbelief. How is this possible? The world tree made it possible, Hirswith replied. You are a half-elf, so that means that you have elven blood running through your veins. Because of this, the world tree acknowledged you as one of its children, granting you a portion of its strength. Hirswith looked at the world tree which had aided Lux to break through to the saint rank. She knew that the tree of the elves felt that the world was facing a threat that could potentially destroy its entirety. Because of this, it decided to sacrifice a quarter of its life force to allow Lux to become a saint. It hoped that the red-headed teenager would be able to use his newfound strength to help the Elysians overcome the calamity that was hanging over their heads. Hearswith inched closer to Lux and started to lightly pat all over his body, making sure that everything was normal. "Looks good," Hearswith nodded her head in satisfaction. "Here, you can take them back." She handed the half-elf his storage rings. The latter immediately took out a set of clothes and got dressed, making him sigh in relief. Although he didn't mind his grandmaster seeing him but naked, he still felt uncomfortable due to the mischievous smile that was plastered on her face as she looked at little Lux. "Before you go anywhere, let me first tell you the status of the abyssal invasion," Hearswith said in a serious tone. Her earlier playful demeanor disappeared without a trace, replaced by a solemnness that made Lux serious as well. "Several kingdoms and empires have fallen into the hands of abyssal lords," Hearswith stated. "The powerhouses of Elysium are stretched thin, so they can't go to every nook and cranny that needs saving. Currently, the face-off against the abyssal lords is in a stalemate, but our scouts have reported that they are starting to gather once again. We believe that they were about to launch an attack on one of the weakest links in our defenses. Fortunately, Maeve's clairvoyance has helped us from time to time, allowing us to counter their plans when they least expect it." Lux breathed a sigh of relief after hearing his grandmaster's report about the Oracle of Light. Maeve had personally asked for his permission to return to the Divine Army to fight in the upcoming war. Since she was originally part of that faction, Lux agreed to her request. There were two reasons for this. The first one was to gain up-to-date information about the battle between the abyssal monsters and the Divine Army of Light. Second, it also allowed Lux to have a middleman who could relay his words to the Divine Army, even if he was in Solais, protecting the Six Kingdoms. At least, that was the original plan. Unfortunately, what happened was Lux almost died at Daniel's hands. If it weren't for Kyoza, Ariel, and Max working together to save him, the half-elf might have already ceased to exist, not even getting the chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation. "There is also one thing that you need to know," Hearswith stated. "This is just as important as the abyssal invasion. This is something that has a greater impact on you as a whole, so brace yourself for what I am about to say." The beautiful elf's words sounded ominous, making Lux feel as if she was going to say something really bad. "Almost everyone in Elysium and Solais forgot about you, including your lovers," Hearswith said. "I'm just letting you know in advance, so you can prepare your heart before seeing them." Her eyes were filled with worry as she looked at her grand disciple, who was looking back at her in disbelief. "They forgot about me?" Lux asked. "All of them?" "Not all of them," Hearswith replied in an attempt to calm her grand disciple, whose face had become as pale as a candle. "Aina, Aurora, Ari, and Aurelia haven't forgotten about you." It was at that moment that Maeve's cryptic words flashed inside his mind. "Master, you cease to exist." Those were the words that Maeve told him when he had the premonition of the abyssal invasion. At first, he didn't think much about it, but the words of an oracle weren't something that could be brushed off so easily. He had shared his worries with Aurora when the two of them had made love for the first time. Perhaps it was his way of telling her a possibility that neither of them wanted to happen. "Master, I have to go," Lux said with a determined look on his face. "I need to go back to Solais." Hearswith sighed in her heart, but she still nodded her head. She knew that, with or without her permission, Lux would return to his home world to see his family members, who had likely forgotten his existence. "Lux, remember this," Hearswith said as she gave the half-elf a gentle hug. "I'll always be here if you need me. So, don't face things alone, okay?" "Yes, Master." Lux nodded. After saying those words, the half-elf turned into particles of light that shot toward the sky. Although his heart was filled with worry, he knew that he had to go back no matter what. Iris, Kai, Vera, Alexander, and Alicia were several of the people whom he cared for the most. Deep inside, he was scared to meet them. He was afraid that all of them would look at him like he was some stranger whom they were seeing for the first time in their lives. Lux appeared inside his home back in the Wildguard stronghold. It was currently empty because his grandma Vera was currently in Barbados Academy. After the battle, the residents had moved back to their homes, because Alexander had informed them that there would be no more invasion from the abyss after the battle. Unfortunately, the spread of the miasma had forced some of the kingdoms to escape to Elysium. They used the territories that they had been developing for the past few years in preparation for this day. Lux looked at the lively stronghold while hiding his presence. Now that he was a saint, it was easier to do it this way. After seeing that the people living in the stronghold hadn't suffered too many hardships, he left just as silently as he came. His next destination was Barbados Academy. With his current rank, it didn't take long before he arrived at his destination through flight. From his vantage point in the sky, his gaze landed on the city of Regulus where Barbados Academy was located. He decided to land in the city first, as he prepared his heart for his inevitable meeting with the members of his family. After hearing that Iris, Kai, and Vera had forgotten about him, Lux felt an ache inside his chest that was hard to describe. Because of this, he was walking aimlessly, without paying any particular attention to his surroundings. It was at that moment when he bumped into someone, making that person fall down on the ground. "I'm sorry," Lux said as he immediately helped the person whom he had bumped into stand up. "I wasn't paying attention to my surround." Lux wasn't able to finish his words as the shawl covering the young lady's face fell down on the ground. A pair of beautiful blue eyes looked at him, which took his breath away. The young lady's long blue hair fluttered as a gust of wind blew past them, making her raise her hand in order to keep it in place. "Iris," Lux said as he looked at his stepsister and fiancée, who loved him very much. "Do I know you?" Iris asked as she looked at him with a calm expression on her face. She was well known in Regulus City because this was where Barbados Academy stood. In fact, it was almost impossible for someone to not recognize her. This was also why she was wearing a shawl to cover her face and hair, preventing anyone from recognizing her. Lux clenched his fist as he tried hard to rein in the emotions that were about to burst from his chest. Seeing his fiancée look at him as if he was some kind of stranger hurt him more than he expected. Lux stuttered because he was at a loss for what he should say. Iris subconsciously raised her right hand and wiped away the tear that had streamed down his face, surprising herself for her actions. "I am sorry," Iris said as she hurriedly pulled her hand away. "You just looked so hurt that my hand moved before I could think. I apologize if I offended you." Lux shook his head, while biting his lips. He was doing his best to not let his emotions get the better of him. He had confirmed his grandmaster's words that Iris truly didn't remember him, making him unable to think of how he should talk to her. "Iris, who is this young man? Do you know him?" At that moment, another familiar voice called out to Iris, making both of them look where the voice came from. "Grandma," Iris said with a smile. "I accidentally bumped into him, and it seems that I have hurt him. He was about to cry earlier." "Oh, dear." Vera looked at her grandson with an apologetic look on her face. "I'm sorry." Iris was in a hurry and wasn't paying close attention to her surroundings. The old lady then frowned as she moved closer to Lux, giving his face a better look. "Have we met somewhere before?" Vera asked with a frown. "I feel like I've seen you in the past." "Do you know him, Grandma?" Iris inquired as she moved closer, looking at the half-elf with curiosity. A half-elf is not someone you see very often in these parts. "I'm sorry," Vera said. "My age must be catching up to me. Please, take this potion. It will help heal the injuries that my granddaughter had caused you." Lux reluctantly accepted the potion that Vera handed to him with a bitter smile on his face. "We are staying in Barbados Academy, so if you don't have a place to stay, feel free to give us a visit." Vera smiled before holding Iris' hand. "My name is Vera, and this is my granddaughter Iris. When you go to Barbados Academy, just tell them our names. They will prepare a guest room for you." "Sorry, but we have to go now," Iris said softly. "By the way, I believe that you haven't told us your name yet." Lux looked at his fiancée, trying to keep his face looking as calm as possible. Lux replied. "My name is Lux." "Lux a good name?" Iris nodded. "I'll see you later, Lux." Vera gave the half-elf a brief nod before walking away hand in hand with her granddaughter, leaving her grandson, whom she didn't remember, behind. When the two ladies disappeared from his vision, tears started to fall from his eyes. The people on the streets were looking at him with pity, thinking that he had confessed his feelings to Iris and was rejected by her. This was a normal occurrence in Regula City, especially when the blue-haired beauty made her appearance. Many teenage boys were trying their luck in order to catch the eye of the princess of Barbados Academy, whose father was a saint. Lux stayed standing in place for a few minutes before he walked away. His vision was blurry, so he just let his feet carry him to any place, as long as it was far from the academy, where the people whom he held dear had forgotten about him. A few minutes later, Lux found himself sitting on a hill overlooking the city of Regulus. He was feeling so sad and depressed that he didn't notice that someone had appeared by his side. "Welcome back, Lux." The half-elf raised his head and saw his father, Alexander, looking at him with a sad smile on his face. "I'm glad that you're back with us," Alexander added as he lightly patted the young man's head. "Almost everyone has forgotten about you, but there are people who didn't. Just look over there." Alexander pointed in a direction where a dense swarm of birds was currently flying. Cries of alarm erupted from the city, as people saw a young lady with long pink hair who was avoiding the bird droppings that were raining down on her from the sky. Running beside her were two little skeletons, who were holding two bone umbrellas to ensure that their master wouldn't get hit by the vile bird droppings from above. Zane and Zeke had informed Aurora that Lux had returned to Solais, prompting the young lady to use the teleportation gate in Agartha to arrive at Barbados Academy. Sensing his presence, Aurora cried out in happiness as tears streamed down her eyes. She then opened her wings and flew towards Lux's direction, wishing to be with him as soon as possible. Alexander knew that the two teenagers needed some time to catch up with each other, so he disappeared from where he stood and returned to Barbados Academy. The saint had tried everything he could to make Iris, Kai, and Vera remember Lux. But, for some reason, the three of them would suffer a terrible headache whenever they were about to remember something about him. Seeing that his methods weren't working, Alexander decided to stop for the time being. Now that Lux had returned to Solais, they needed to find a way to get their loved ones to recover their memories, which had been sealed away by the laws that were implemented to prevent Daniel from having his way. Lux opened his wings and met Aurora mid-air, hugging her tightly. Both of them cried bitter tears as they held each other close. Finally, after more than a year of separation, the young lady was able to hold her beloved once again, whom she thought she had lost the day after the abyssal gates made their appearance in the worlds of Elysium and Solais. Zane and Zeke started to unleash an aura of death toward the sky, making all the birds that were targeting Aurora fly away in fear. Their two masters had just reunited with each other, and anyone who would dare to try messing with them was the enemies of the two little skeletons. "Tell me about everything that happened while I was gone," Lux said softly as he held Aurora in a loving embrace. Aurora nodded and began her tale about the events that transpired after Lux was sealed in a block of crystal. She told him how scared she was when she realized that Iris, Kai, and a few of her sisters had completely forgotten about him. She told him about the destruction that the Abyssal Army had caused to the world of Elysium and how the factions of the world were resisting their expansion. After she finished talking, Lux gave her a bottle of water that she could drink to quench her thirst. Currently, Agartha is the only kingdom left untouched by the war that is happening on the surface, Aurora stated. But my father has never lowered his guard and commanded our armies to remain vigilant. He had also placed several scouts on the surface to monitor the movement of the Abyssal Lords. Lux nodded his head in approval after hearing that the king of Agartha wasn't taking the Abyssal invasion lightly. "What about you?" Aurora asked. "Are you hurt anywhere? I really thought that you had died. If not for the fact that Zane and Zeke told me that there was still a chance for you to recover, I might have really thought that you were gone for good." Lux smiled bitterly before telling Aurora everything that happened to him while he was trapped inside the block of crystal. Aurora was quite surprised when she learned about Luna, who was apparently Aina's sister in her past life. "Fate is truly mysterious," Aurora muttered. "But I'm glad that you were able to get back. Are you planning to meet Aina soon?" Lux nodded. "Yes, I plan to tell her about her sister. Also, I need to find a way for Iris, Kai, Valerie, and Ollie to regain their memories of me. Seeing them like this is very painful. The young lady lightly rubbed Lux's back as she rested her head on his shoulder. Don't worry, Aurora assured him. I'm sure there is a way to make them remember. The two didn't say anything after that and simply embraced each other, feeling each other's warmth, reaffirming to themselves that this wasn't a dream and that the two of them really were together again. What are your plans? Aurora finally took the initiative to break the silence. Truth be told, I'm at a loss at what to do, Lux replied. I was taken by Asmodeus to a Spore Frieden in order to ask my Grandmaster for help. She then took me to the World Tree, and I spent a few weeks there to recover. Lux then unleashed the power of his rank, making Aurora's eyes widen in shock. You're now a saint? Aurora looked at her lover in disbelief. Yes, Lux replied, but being a saint won't bring their memories back. I'd gladly return to my previous rank if that would bring back everyone's memories of me. Aurora didn't say anything and pondered for a bit. After she organized her thoughts, she cupped Lux's face and looked at him with a solemn expression on her face. Don't say that, Aurora stated. Right now, everyone needs to be strong to face the calamity that has fallen on both worlds. Currently, the 6 kingdoms are cut off from the rest of Solais due to the miasma that is preventing anyone from leaving it. This is also a blessing in disguise since the Abyssal Lords are also unable to go to this place. Even they are not fully immune to miasma. Right now, we should prioritize eliminating the Abyssal Lords who were able to cross over to the 2 worlds. As long as they are here, the people will continue to suffer from their whims. Perhaps after the immediate threat is eliminated, we will be able to focus our attention on finding a cure to bring back my sister's memories. You mentioned the Pillars of Eternity in the past. Maybe these pillars have the power to restore their memories as well, so don't lose hope. Okay? Right? Lux replied as hope returned to his eyes. I forgot about the Pillars of Eternity. They have the power to bend the laws of the world. With them, we might be able to restore their memories. Aurora nodded. But before that, we still need to meet your father at Barbados Academy. He and Sir Maximilian have retained their memories. I'm sure they have a lot of things that they would like to tell you. The half-elf reluctantly nodded his head, knowing that Aurora was right. Although it would be quite painful to see his 2 fiancés, who had no memories of him, he still needed to talk to his father and Kai's grandfather about their progress in the Finn Kingdom. Don't worry, Aurora said as she held Lux's hands. Until the day they regain their memories, I will not leave your side. I will support you with everything I have, so raise your head and never lose your way. Only by moving forward can we change things for the better. Lux smiled before kissing Aurora's forehead. You've gotten a lot better at speaking after a year, Lux commented in a teasing tone. I wonder, did anything else change? Aurora stuck her tongue at the half-elf, who was looking at her with a mischievous smile on his face. You'll know about the changes that happened to me tonight, Aurora said. I'll let you inspect every nook and cranny of my body, so behave for now. Lux knew that Aurora was doing her best to make him temporarily forget about the pain he was feeling, which he greatly appreciated. He then stood up and held her like a princess while looking at the academy in the distance. Aurora, please don't leave my side like you promised, Lux said. I might not be able to take it if I lose you as well. I will not be going anywhere, I promise, Aurora replied. So, let's go, Lux. We cannot change anything by standing still. The half-elf nodded and opened the draconic wings behind his back. Their next destination was Barbados Academy. Lux looked at the gates of the academy with a determined gaze. Aurora was by his side, holding his hand firmly, preventing him from escaping. Let's go, Aurora said as she led the way, pulling the half-elf, who was still preparing his heart for the second time on that day. After entering the academy, they walked the familiar path that led inside. There were some students loitering in the halls. They gave the half-elf a curious stare and wondered why he was with Aurora. The half-succubus was already well known to everyone because of her incredible beauty, as well as her incredible bad luck. Just as they were headed towards the headmaster's office, they saw a boar walking in their direction with a smug smile on her face. Aurora, Kai called out as she happily walked in their direction. Who is this guy? Is he perhaps your boyfriend? The one that you've been calling Tux? It's Lux, Kai, Aurora corrected. Yes, that's what I said, Tux. Kai blinked in confusion. The boar then moved closer to give the half-elf a better look. He is indeed quite handsome, Kai stated. Now I understand why you fell in love with him, Aurora. But can he be really trusted? The way he look at me makes me feel that he has a thing for bestiality. He might be a pervert, you know? Lux was doing his best to hold himself back from hugging Kai and slapping her bum for calling him a pervert. The half-elf wasn't a fan of bestiality, but if it would make the high priestess remember him, then he was willing to do it. However, he knew that doing that would be useless, so he remained silent and looked at the boar, whom he found annoying in the past. Kai and him had met at the tournament in Barbados Academy. She had joined in order to save Iris from being married off to a person that she didn't like. The high priestess was a gentle soul, and yet when it came to things that were important to her, she was willing to fight for it. This was probably one of the reasons why Lux fell in love with her, aside from her beauty and unconditional support, which he could count on whenever he needed it. By the way, since you were headed this way, are you perhaps looking for the headmaster? Kai inquired. Aurora nodded. Yes, we are looking for him. Good timing then. He is currently in Iris' residence. My grandfather is there as well, Kai stated. I was planning to go there, so why don't the three of us go together? Sounds good, Aurora replied. The three walked side by side, with Lux in the middle. He noticed that from time to time, the boar would sneak glances on his face. Would you like to join the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Kai inquired after being caught by the half-elf. The application was closed years ago, but I am willing to make an exception for you. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Lux asked with a smile. Doesn't your sister already have a lover? Why are you looking for people again? You know my sister? Kai blinked. You also know about the purpose of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? Aurora mentioned it to me, Lux replied in a heartbeat. She's told me a lot of things about her sisters. Oh, so that's it, phew. Kai nodded her head in understanding. Well, it is true that my sister already has a lover, but that doesn't mean that you can't join it. Are you perhaps a swordsman? I have plenty of swords in my collection. If you join, I'll give you 3 legendary swords like Excalibur, Bamung, Durandal, Calidbalg, and many more. Lux couldn't help but smile because Kai had offered the same thing to Keen back then. In order to live his peaceful life, the swordsman agreed, but he didn't take any of the swords that Kai had mentioned. Feeling that he wouldn't lose anything by teasing the boar, the half-elf stopped walking and used his free hand to hold the side of the boar's face. Do you perhaps like me? Lux asked. Aurora is a very understanding lady. If you like, the two of you can share me if you want. So, how about it? Hey Aurora, is this guy sane in the head? Kai took several steps back. Although I admit that he is handsome and is totally my type, isn't he a bit too loose? Are you fine with having this kind of guy as your boyfriend? Yes, Aurora replied in a heartbeat. So, how about it, Kai? I'm willing to share my boyfriend with you. The boar hesitated for a bit before stomping her foot down. I see. Both of you are just teasing me, huh? Kai snorted. You've become bold, Aurora. It seems that returning to your family has made you naughty. I'll go tell Iris about this later. As for you, Kai walked towards Lux and circled his body twice. She even used her hoof to lightly pat Lux's backside, as if testing if it was good or not. The half-elf was very tempted to return the favor because, just as always, his fiancée's IQ had decreased a lot because she was in her boar form. I guess I can consider your proposal, Aurora, Kai stated. But I'll only give my answer once I get to know him better. Now, let's go. Iris is waiting for us. The boar walked away without even bothering to wait for the 2 people behind her. Lux was quite surprised because he didn't expect Kai would treat his joke seriously. Although their minds can't remember you, their hearts and bodies can, Aurora whispered. I have been monitoring Kai, and her heart beats very fast whenever she looks at you. Lux looked at the young lady beside him with a surprised look on his face. Really? Lux asked. Yes, Aurora replied. Even now, Kai walked away in order to escape because she can't understand why she finds you very attractive. If I was not here, She might have pinned you down, you know? The half-succubus giggled because she was telling the truth. She also didn't expect Kai would react that way to Lux, making her feel that her hypothesis was correct. If only their memories were sealed, and their hearts and bodies still remembered him, they might actually fall in love with Lux all over again, despite seeing him for the first time in their life. Right now, I think Kai experienced what they call love at first sight. Aurora smiled as she gave Lux's hand a gentle squeeze. You said that you met Iris earlier, right? I wonder if she felt the same. Lux couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat after Aurora's revelation. Her words made him remember a famous saying back on Earth. The mind forgets, but the heart will always remember. And what is the heart's memory but love itself? The half-elf didn't know if this was true or not. But if it was true, then he might be able to have a close relationship with them again, while looking for the pillars of eternity, which might help them remember him faster. It's you, Iris muttered after seeing Lux appear inside her residence, while holding Aurora's hand. For some reason, she felt a pang of pain in her chest when she saw the half-elf holding the half-succubus hand. What's this I'm feeling? Iris thought as she placed her hand over her chest. Is this perhaps jealousy? Me? Jealous of Aurora because of him? Impossible. Aurora, who was standing beside Lux, couldn't help but arch her eyebrow as she glanced at Iris. She was very sensitive to emotions, and could even project herself on others, allowing her to feel the same feeling as them. The moment she entered the residence, she had already activated her powers and subtly connected her senses with Iris and Kai. She could have done the same for Vera, but she didn't take this chance because she was a saint and stronger than her. Lux looked at his grandma with sadness. Long before the War of the Abyss had started, he had ordered Blackfire to free her from its influence. Vera was a precious family member, and he didn't want to treat her as a subordinate that he could summon anytime. It didn't feel right, so he decisively ordered Blackfire to set her free. The coffin had the power to do that. Any creature that it freed would be free from its influence. Because of this, Vera was affected by the laws that rippled across Solais, making her forget her grandson, whom she had raised with love and care since he was a baby. Although it hurt him that Iris and Kai had forgotten him, the thing that hurt him the most was actually Vera forgetting about him. He didn't regret freeing her from Blackfire's control, but seeing her in this state hurt him very much. Aurora had already told him that she had tapped into Iris and Kai's feelings, allowing her to understand what they were feeling at the moment. However, since Vera was stronger than her, she didn't dare do it. So Lux was clueless about what his grandma thought about him. Iris is reacting to me being with you, Aurora said through telepathy. Let me try something. The half-succubus tiptoed and pressed her lips over Lux's, kissing him in front of everyone. Suddenly, she heard someone clear her throat, and it was none other than Iris. Aurora, please hold back a little on your public display of affection, Iris said with a frown. This is not the time and place for it. Alexander, Maximilian, and Alicia, who were also inside the residence, looked at this scene with amused expressions on their faces. The two saints even glanced at each other, as if both of them came to the same conclusion. I'm sorry, Iris, Aurora replied in an apologetic tone. It has been a while since I saw my lover. I wasn't able to stop myself from kissing him. Iris nodded. I'm sorry as well. I didn't know what came over me. Kai, who was watching from the side, was very tempted to charge at Lux and ram him with her tusks. For some reason, she also didn't feel good seeing Aurora act sweetly with the guy, who was totally her type. In order to take control of the situation, Alexander cleared his throat and started the meeting. We have gathered here today to talk about the migration to the Finn Kingdom, Alexander stated. Although the threat of the abyssal invasion has stopped temporarily, we cannot let our guard down. The only thing that is preventing them from reaching our location is the miasma that is spreading in the surroundings. However, after careful investigation, we found out that the speeding of the miasma is also increasing. Perhaps it is being affected by the other abyssal creatures that appeared outside of our borders. Since we have been cut off from the world, we don't know how many abyssal lords are present beyond the scope of the miasma. The people from the ancestral lands of the Rowan tribe have already started to migrate to the Finn Kingdom. Kai's sister, Rose, is responsible for this migration, and the army of the Finn Kingdom is assisting her as well. Maximilian nodded his head in confirmation. The Rowan tribe members here in Barbados Academy will also start to migrate as soon as the people from the ancestral lands finish their migration. Alexander then glanced at Alicia and waited for her report. I contacted the Wild Guard stronghold and informed them about our intention to migrate. They said that they would need a week to prepare for the migration. I will inform the people of Regulus City after this meeting is over about the migration plans as well. If all goes according to plan, we will be able to transfer everyone to the Finn Kingdom within a month. Alexander nodded. Mother, I will ask you and Iris to oversee the migration to Elysium. I will remain here in the academy until the last resident of Regulus City has been evacuated. Also, I still need to talk to the kings that remain here in the Six Kingdoms. Because of Lady Hearswith's help, the Elswith Kingdom is being allowed to build their homes near Sporfrieden. Similar to us, it will take them a month to complete their migration. Just as Alexander was about to continue his explanation, a blue comet descended from the sky and landed in front of Lux and Aurora. Pa! A blue baby slime looked up at the half-elf with tears streaming from her eyes. Pa! Eiko jumped towards Lux and buried herself against his chest as her tears fell like rain. She had been fighting against the Abyssal army that had tried to attack the Ford Federation, so she didn't notice right away that her papa had returned. Eiko only sensed Lux's presence after the battle ended and hurriedly returned to Solais to see him. The half-elf felt his heart ache as he lightly patted the crying baby slime on his chest. Woo-woo! Eiko cried sadly as the heartache she had kept inside her heart burst forth like a broken dam. Iris, who saw Eiko act this way, was flustered and walked towards the half-elf in order to retrieve the baby slime who was crying on the chest of the red-headed teenager, whom she had seen only twice in her life. I'm sorry, Iris said as she stood in front of Lux. I didn't know why she's acting like this. She's usually very tame and doesn't make things difficult for others. It's okay, Lux replied as he continued to gently pat the baby slime, whose cries were getting louder. Perhaps the fact that Iris had completely forgotten her papa made Eiko sadder than usual, so she cried harder because of it. Eiko, come, Iris said. Please don't bother him. No, Eiko replied. I'll stay with Pa. Eiko, don't be like this. No. Iris felt helpless because even though she tried to pry the baby slime away from the half-elf's body, the little one would dodge her hands and move to a new location. After this happened a few times, Lux held Iris' hand and placed it over his chest. Let her cry a bit, Lux said as he looked at his fiancée with a sad smile on his face. I don't mind if she stays with me for a while. Iris felt her heart beating wildly inside her chest. She couldn't understand what was happening to her, but for some reason, the half-elf's touch made her want to imitate the baby slime and bury her head on his chest while being enclosed in his loving embrace. But Iris' willpower was strong. In order to prevent herself from making a fool of himself, she took a few steps back, with her hand clasped over her chest. Then, I'll leave her to you for a bit, Iris said. Your name is Lux, right? I'll remember you. Thank you, Lux replied as he coaxed Eiko, who was hiding behind his back to avoid being taken away by Iris, to return to his chest. The baby slime obeyed and continued to cry on her papa's chest. It had been more than a year since she had last seen him, and although she was very happy that he had returned, she was also very sad. Despite the fact that her mama and papa were in the same place, there was a distance between them. This made Eiko very sad, so she did what only a baby could do to release her frustration. She cried, while her papa covered her with his rough hands. Hands who had fought many battles with her and allowed her to raise her rank to become a powerful monster. Although they were rough, they were warm, and made her feel as if she had returned to that time, where she was still a powerless baby slime, and needed Lux's protection to survive in the worlds of Solais and Elysium.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.